Microsoft cut its engineers off from AI because the bill got too big.
Why wouldn't Microsoft put throttling on their employees so they wouldn't allow them to spend more and really utilize the AI?
There needs to be a way to measure exactly what employees are using it for. And from there, you can get a gauge on how much value you're actually generating from this.
Does forcing AI as a default ultimately erode trust faster than it drives engagement?
Technology simplified, curiosity amplified.
Hello, everyone. Long time no see. It's been a while. We had some change ups and co-hosts, etc. But we're back, and we're happy to carry on from where we were previously with around AI. We've got some good stories for you. Everyone promised AI would replace white collar work. Then the invoices arrived. So this episode follows the money, from the hype to the cost wall the companies are hitting, to consumer backlash, and then eventually to where the industry is betting the spend goes next. So here with us we have my good friend Mike Shoop. Mike, if you want to introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Grew up in Colorado in the US. Got interested in software development before I went to school, and started coding classes. Got a degree in computer science engineering. Started consulting right out of school, rewriting some pretty cool loan origination stuff with a small consulting company. Started a company shortly after that. Created real estate owned software for agents that managed REO properties. So that was kind of fun. Done some different stuff. Created a wireless sprinkler controller for fun with a couple of friends of mine and my sister-in-law. So that was always a fun project. So yeah, just kind of maybe all around computer nerd or something. I guess you could qualify me as that.
I think all of us on here can be qualified.
Yeah, probably pretty safe to say.
Do we all qualify? Okay, good. I'm in
so.
company. Good.
Well, cool. Yeah. So Shoop and I, we now work together at RSM. We just build an AI, building custom solutions, etc. So he's pretty in this industry. So we're gonna have a good episode for you guys today. So let's move on to our first article here. So here we have the article is titled Microsoft AI chief gives it 18 months for all white collar work to be automated. So the summary here, Mustafa Suleyman, CEO of Microsoft AI, told the Financial Times that AI will reach human level performance on most or all professional tasks within roughly a year to 18 months, singling out accounting, legal, marketing, and project management as exposed. His reasoning leans on exponential growth in compute. The piece situates this in a longer drumbeat of similar warnings, from Amadei, Ford's Farley, Musk near-term AGI, while noting the evidence so far is mixed. A meta study found AI made some developers 20% slower, and profit margin gains have been concentrated almost entirely in big tech rather than the broader economy. So high level points here, the bull case is essentially a compute scaling argument. More compute means more, models outcode humans. Every desk job is retrofittable. Sullivan's bigger agenda is to, build Microsoft's own frontier superintelligence models and reduce dependency on OpenAI. And so the reality check here is already in the same article here. So marginal project productivity gains, a SaaS sell-offs, is what they call a SaaS apocalypse, if you will, and disruption largely confined to tech. So a few questions here. So is exponential compute a credible basis for an 18-month timeline? or does it quietly assume cost and reliability scale the same way capability does? I guess in my opinion, I don't think throwing more compute at, you know, these models is the solution here. We've been talking past what 20 episodes of this podcast about, how many resources these AI models, these compute data centers take, the amount of water is used, the amount of electricity that is used. Our electricity grid can't even handle, the our everyday lives. There's a something or other happening where, you know, hundreds and thousands of people are out of power when a single storm blows through, and that's takes them like 3 days for them to fix the issue. So, adding the amount of compute and energy cost to the equation, I don't think that is where it should go. We've already seen with, these Chinese models, DeepSeek, Kimi, these are smaller models doing, just as well as the larger models. I think benchmark Quen 3.6, I think 27 billion parameters was like super close to the coding capability of Claude 4.7 Opus, which is insane. Claude Opus 4.7 is probably, close to somewhere around a couple trillion parameters. This one's 27 billion parameter model doing just, if not, close to as well as this trillion parameter model, right? I think that the way this goes is we'll probably be going more towards models that are specifically for different things. So you have a model that's basically just for coding, right? It's been trained on all this coding, et cetera. It's not like a general purpose model. It's more pointed model where you have smaller compute needed for this model because it's more pointed. It's not like a generalized model. And I think that a lot of these companies are going to be switching to more SLMs, small language models that are more tailored to their own company. I don't think we can sustain the amount of cost and compute and energy that these models take, no matter how much these companies say that we can. And I think they're pretty much just deceiving their investors at this point, and hoping that the gains eventually follow, if they just keep throwing money at it. But at that point, does the investment make sense?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it a lot, like you said, of efficiency over just brute force and how everybody's building it out in mass, bigger, better, blah, blah, blah. But they don't stop to think about efficiency. And I think it's because right now everybody's just trying to beat everybody else to the punch. And it's the limitations are, like you said, energy. I mean, I'm in Texas. We all know about the Texas power grid, right? So it's not just about that. It's, there's so many different impacts, environmentally, the space, where you're going to build it, or where you're going to build it to where you have the resources that you need. It's got to be practical. Um, so you're probably not going to be building out in the middle of a desert, you know what I mean, for the most part. Um, but also hardware limitations. God forbid we have another, repeat of 2020, or there's something else that gets in the way of, production chains and everything of that nature. So yeah, we can build, these bigger this bigger hardware with more capabilities. But at the end of the day, if we don't kind of stop to start optimizing, then you're just going to push past limitations. As we're seeing now, the costs are going to begin outweighing the value. And then you've just got a big mess on your hands because, yeah, you might have been the first one across the finish line, but what did it cost? What's it look like after you've reached that finish line? And are you gonna where are you setting that finish line when you get closer? It's just pushing further and further, and it's just getting more and more out of control. And at some point, there's all these ghost deals happening with no real financial backing, and it's just based on faith and hope and prayers. And eventually it's all going to reach a point of accountability. And so, as we kind of cover today, you'll see even just staffing, they kind of just hand it to them and say, run wild and free. And then they start looking at the banks and they're like, wait a second, we can't afford this, because they never really stop to think about, okay, well, it's going to cost these resources. We're getting charged by the token usage, we're getting charged by this. Now we've got to have ways to support it, all these different things that go into it. And all they were really thinking was, ooh, AI good, AI more efficient, it's gonna either replace people or make them, more, be able to get more value for their time. And where those are great points to have, outside of, we know that we don't think that replacing employees is going to be the answer, because you have to have human in the loop. But a lot of them just threw stuff at the wall, and now here comes the accountability. Now you're having to cut back on what people can utilize. You're having to cut back on so many different things, because you're like, oops, you know, you're not listening to advice. And this is kind of where it's going to get all around. I don't think it's just on a business, business per business level. I think this is the industry as a whole. So I think it
Mhm.
just needs to be efficiency and accountability going forward, and people need to kind of slow it down and find the best route.
Right. So Shoop, I'll direct this question to you. So we all know we work in the industry. There's no, you can't not say AI has its place. You can't say that AI doesn't make us more productive. Um, but when a vendor itself predicts mass automation and sells the automation, how should we weigh that forecast? It's like a, it's like a company, doing their own testing on a specific product and saying like, hey, it does this well. We don't need any third party testing or anything like that. Just trust us, right? Trust me, bro, if you
Right.
will.
But that's always hard to justify, right? It's like when you take on a software project, I think you'd be going in unarmed if you didn't have AI, right? It's like it's a tool that if you're going to write code, you have to be utilizing right now, I would
Mhm.
say. Um, it just makes everything quicker. You still have the 10 to 20% that you're going to have to fill in, right? And so that's where the expertise comes in. Um, it's So when you go to a vendor and you say, "Hey, I'm going to help you with this project," how do you scope that? How do you justify bill rates? How do you justify the cost of the software? Technically, that cost should come down because you can write it faster, right?
Yep.
So it's I don't know. It's not an easy question to answer, and I think owners of companies are in a tough boat as well because they're hearing AI all over the place, and will their company disappear if they don't jump on the bandwagon? And so they jump on, and then the you get the results that we see now, right? Where it's like, well, wait a minute, let's justify the costs. So I think at
Mhm.
the end, though, the market's going to figure it out. It's right for companies to try to protect their place in the market, and leverage the tools that are available. But yeah, at what cost, right?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like anytime I see like some benchmarks come out, it's so incremental, and it's like, oh, agentic coding with coding harness has gone up 70 to 75%. Oh my God, this is amazing. It was 60% before, but then
Right.
if you look at the metrics of something else, it's gone down by like 10%. And you're like, are we hitting like some plateau where now, you're just tweaking certain things and lowering the capabilities of one thing just to get something else capability to go higher? Like,
Right.
it's
But that's
always.
that's the great question is like how much more like okay, let's say you start a software project and AI helps you get 80% of the way there. well, what's the hardest part of projects are often that last 20%,
Yeah.
right? And so how do you calculate how much more compute you need to actually make it 100% bomb proof, right? Where AI can just do it soup to nuts, everything, and it just works perfectly. I don't know how much more is that going to cost? It's tough to calculate, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's why I always think it's funny when, you know, people like Suleyman come out and say stuff like, oh, white collar jobs were replaced in 18 months. Okay, great. That's awesome. But what happens after that? Who consumes the AI? Or who is able to buy the products that these companies are selling when
Right.
they've replaced all of their employees with AI and they're not making any money? Are we just going to get to a point where like nobody's working, and then all these companies are just trying to save up as much money as possible, where eventually everybody just stops paying and working and stuff like that? Like where's the end goal here?
Yeah, where are we going? Yeah.
It's definitely finding a balance between here and here. Like you said, that you're gonna have to hop on that bandwagon. It's kind of a matter of which wagon is it going to be. Um, because I feel like right now the industry is kind of defining itself, and all these different, it's not just one. I feel like everybody just kind of AI is this one thing, like, and nobody understands it. It's just this magical entity, AI, and you love it or you hate it, and there's no in between, and everything's black and white. But the reality is this isn't going anywhere. And if, whether you're an employee, whether you're a company, you're gonna have to learn it. It is another example of technological innovation that's going to be leading the way going forward. And we've talked about in the past of kind of there's always going to be adopters and people that are on the fence, and there's going to be people that are completely against it, whether it's founded or unfounded. And I think it's just not a black and white thing right now, especially, you know, it's all kind of smoothing itself out. And I mean, the AI and the technology around it has just grown so much, so fast. I mean, just in the last 4 or 5 years. Whenever I graduated school 4 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, we were just starting to use ChatGPT, like just
Wow.
starting to use it. It was kind of this new thing that you knew about, but weren't you just start getting comfortable with it because people tell you to start getting comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But now everybody knows what ChatGPT is, right? And now there's a bunch of competitors to ChatGPT, and it's now things like Copilot and other technologies are just built into things now, like other applications and services and software. So it's just become this massive thing so fast that people don't know what it is. They don't know what it's like, what its role is in their day-to-day lives. And a lot of people are scared. They don't want it. And then there's the other side where they're trying to find a way to implement it without breaking their bank, which means like with Microsoft and with some of these other companies that we're discussing, sometimes it means that they overstepped when scaling. It's just difficult to understand that line, but it is important to understand what AI is, like the different use cases. And I think you have to provide your adopters, your early adopters, with guidance, right? Like, because our company, for instance, they provide us tools that we can use, but just, providing it, if people don't really know what to do with it, they're they're not using it to the value that it could provide, or they're not using it at all. Um, I was having a conversation the other day, and they were telling me how they use it for um sentiment analysis on calls and things like that. And I'm like, that's something I never would have thought of, you know? So it is cool to like talk to people and see how they're using it. Um, but you also have people that are just having conversations with it. And so you do have to find that line. And I think companies are gonna be watching these larger companies like Microsoft seeing where Microsoft, because they have a little bit more of a cushion. Like at the end of the day, they understand that they're probably going to take a left turn when they should have taken a right turn, and they're probably positioned for that kind of mistake. Whereas some of the smaller companies, they're going to want to learn from that and they're going to watch it. Um, and I think that's where we're going to start seeing the market line up is just different strategies, approaches, and use cases being more clearly defined.
Yep. So speaking of costs, that brings us to next two articles here. One, is about Microsoft. Next one is about Uber. So the title of this Microsoft article is Microsoft cut its engineers off from AI because the bill got too big. So, this is the hinge of the, this episode here. So, Microsoft, which writes a large share of its own code with generative AI and has a deep Anthropic partnership, is reportedly canceling Claude Code licenses across its experiences and devices group, Windows, Microsoft 365, Outlook, Teams, Surface, with a June 30th cutoff, moving engineers to the cheaper in-house GitHub Copilot CLI. Crucially, this isn't a retreat from AI. Claude models still run inside Copilot CLI, and the broader Microsoft Anthropic deal, including Anthropic's large Azure compute commitment, is still intact. The culprit is the pricing model. Token-based billing means hours of agentic coding rack cost fast, and Nvidia execs line frames the whole problem. For his team, compute now costs more than the employees. Which is kind of funny when people were relying on AI to replace employees, and now they're realizing that it's more a tool to use alongside your employees rather than replacement. And so the high level points here are, the constraint isn't capability, it's a unit of economics. To replace a worker, AI is to deliver equal or better output for less money. And for most jobs, math just doesn't work yet. And one of those obviously is development. Token-based pricing is the villain of the piece, great for vendors, brutal for predictability. Layoffs are still happening, 115,000 plus in 2026 as per layoffs.fyi. Companies are cutting jobs and buying AI simultaneously, even without proven savings. So the question here is this a genuine pullback or just procurement optimization? Swapping a pricey tool for a cheaper one that runs the same models.
So I have two questions on that. Why wouldn't Microsoft put throttling on their employees so they wouldn't allow them to spend more and really utilize the AI when absolutely necessary? Maybe they're just burning through tokens unnecessarily, right?
Yeah, I mean, so that's the thing here. Now, Microsoft, if you're listening, don't get angry at me. But Microsoft, Meta, Google, they're all pushing their employees to use AI, and they're all tracking the AI use for these employees. So a lot of these employees are feeling the pressure, and so my inkling is that a lot of these employees were just like, okay, well, if a lot of our metrics and stuff is based on AI usage, why don't I just use AI for literally everything, right? And spend as much as possible. And so Microsoft obviously, and I'm sure Meta, Google, they didn't take these into consideration. How much token usage, how much cost is actually being put into coding and whatever the heck people are using these models for. And so people are just like, okay, let me just continuously use these models for whatever the heck I need because it's a metric that I have, right? Microsoft is pushing AI into literally everything: Windows, Teams, Word, Excel, all that good stuff, right? And so I think a lot of the blame has to be on Microsoft, right, for pushing this metric and telling their employees that their performance is based on this AI usage, and then it's also Microsoft just not really understanding how much cost and compute this actually takes to run these models and continuously spend.
So
Um,
here's the other thought I had on that.
yeah.
'Cause I think that's 100% right. But I think everybody who has a laptop on their desk probably has extra cycles other than you, because I know you're like at 99.9% on your laptop. But what at what step does everybody just run AI local and do the things that local models can provide and only use, the Claude or the Copilot or whatever when they need more resources, more wide-reaching resources?
Yeah, man, I think that's a good point. I feel like if you have actual engineers that still know how to code, I don't know about these kids coming out of college these days. But if you have engineers that can actually code, I think having a somewhat capable model like Qwen 3.6 or whatever, I believe it only needs you know 18 gigabytes of VRAM. So if you have you know a 32 a laptop with 32 gigabytes of VRAM, maybe like a 5090 or something, you give everybody that 5090. Eventually, if they're using that for most of their scaffolding, etc., and then and then doing the actual genuine like hard coding, partially themselves, and then passing that off to a cloud compute model when they need to, I think all that optimization would be good. And one of our articles later will be uh you know about Nvidia's latest announcement about their laptops, and so we'll touch on that a bit later. But I think that local hosting, local models is a good point. And I think that a lot of companies will go ahead and they already have these servers. I'm sure they're not using the full capabilities of these servers. Why not just host a good model on their own server and then give everybody a certain allocation of compute, etc. So maybe they're not necessarily doing it on their own laptops, but on the company server. um and that might be cheaper for a startup or something, or a mid-sized company that does might not want to spend millions of dollars on these tokens, rather spend maybe $500,000 on a decent server rack, and then deploy a good model to that server rack, and then give everybody a certain allocation of compute. So I think it really depends on cost optimization. And I think a lot of these companies are going token based because they it's easier, it's right there, all they have to do is call that endpoint, and they have the compute ready, right? And I think sooner or later you will have companies that will start thinking about hosting models. You have the Chinese models that are getting better and better, like I said, Qwen 3.6, etc. So I think eventually you'll have the optimization you were talking about.
Yeah, and we talked about SLMs too, right? And
Yep.
their utilization and just kind of leveraging different um, orchestration and things like that for more specific tasks. So yeah, I would much more lean toward that.
Mhm. And so that brings me to my next question here is, we already have Cloud Code, etc., all have flat rates, right? But does token-based pricing structurally cap enterprise adoption, or will it just push everyone towards subscription slash flat rate? Now that's an interesting question, because a lot of these companies already started out as flat rate, right? But they weren't making any money on it, and so that's where the token base starts coming in. Now, if token base is causing these enterprises to have to spend so much more money than this flat rate, where's the medium there? Like, what's going to happen in the future, right? uh, we all know GitHub Copilot is going to more of a token based. And there are people on LinkedIn who are using a estimator by putting in how much they're using GitHub Copilot, and the cost was coming out to like 20, 30 times the amount, right, of what they were spending previously with the flat rate. So I think, in my opinion, token base will structurally cap enterprise adoption and will push enterprises to find different avenues, such as hosting their own models. So, next question here is, if compute can cost more than the headcount, does the AI is cheaper than humans thesis collapse, or just get delayed until inference gets cheap?
Yeah, I think it gets delayed. I just don't think these tight timelines of 18 months and stuff are practical in any facet.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think AI is cheaper than humans, I think, in some cases, but it has to be better, right? And I think I mean, until it's better than 90%, and who knows if it's ever even going to get there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, at some point, it's a facilitator and a force multiplier, right? But um, it's interesting. If you always have to have that human in the loop, well, the only way that AI can be leveraged is with a human, right? And so it's not a full replacement. It should just be you can do more things with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's interesting to hear like blanket statements like AI is going to take over all blue collar work. Well, how? It can't do it as good as a blue collar worker can, right? It's like if you still need to audit documents and you still need to audit code and make sure it works, then it can't be replaced. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're having to spin up more and more data centers to be able to get more and more compute, does it really make AI cheaper if the consumers that are around these data centers that are using your AI have to subsidize your company? Like, we have energy costs skyrocketing. We have you know uh, the amount of water being used skyrocketing, and all of that is being pushed on to consumers. I know my electricity bill has gone up a lot. Like, I think my bill has gone up maybe 2 3 times in the past few months or so, which is insane. um so, like, where does it end? Are we just going to keep subsidizing these companies and have welfare for corporations? Like, what's going on here? We Sure, the AI models get cheaper and these AI companies start making money, but if we're spending all our money on the energy, on all of our energy bills, is it really a good thing?
So yeah, you also start taking into the consideration the social aspect of this type of thing, because you already have people on the fence, just your general population, right? Just take them into consideration, not just, enterprise level, just your general population using it day to day that are already on the fence, and you have people already against you building these large data centers. Well, once you start coming in and not taking into consideration these types of impacts, you're building, you're negatively impacting your own image with probably without even realizing it. I don't know how much they really even think about that with this rapid growth. And I think that's something these companies need to be considering, because you're directly impacting your own bottom line based on the relationships you're building even in the public sector. So, we work with AI. I'd say we're all three pretty big AI guys. Um, but there's still considerations like this that are very important, and we can all sit here and discuss even that we don't like that. We don't like how it impacts us, whether we're directly using it or not. We don't, we also understand the societal and ecological implications. So, you know, there just needs to be a level, there needs to be a point in time where they stop and consider these things.
Mhm. Well, I mean, that brings us to, a second company and their AI spend here. This article is called Uber Caps Employee AI Spending. Um, so Uber, makes the abstract, that we're talking about here, concrete here. So after encouraging staff to use AI as much as possible, like we said, Microsoft, Google, all of them, AI metrics, even ranking usage on internal leaderboards, the company burned through its entire 2026 AI coding budget in 4 months. The CTO's quote, "I'm back to the drawing board," captures it. By March, 84% of engineers were using Claude Code. Roughly 70% of the committed code originated with AI, and some engineers spent $500 to $2,000 a month. A new policy, a $1,500 a month cap per employee per agentic tool, Claude Code Cursor, tracked on an internal dashboard, exceedable with permission. The irony the article presses, the budget blew up because the tools worked, not because they were wasted. Uber CEO has separately cast doubt on whether the spend ties to real consumer facing value. So the question here is, if usage caps slow down your most productive engineers, are you saving money or just hiding the real cost of work? I mean, I think that there's a few points here. I mean, the article, that summary doesn't really, talk about. Sure, it says 70% of committed code originated with AI. It doesn't talk about the amount of time spent, reviewing that code, etc. Google previously said, I want to say maybe 2 months ago, that 40% of their code was being written by AI, but that only attributed to a no, I think it was, yeah, 40%, but that only attributed to like a 10 to 20% increase in productivity because all of that was going towards more code reviews. So even though 40% of the code is being written, they still had to have many more code reviews because they had to actually understand what the AI was spitting out to understand, if it was going to actually work, etc. So I think that capping spend does not necessarily slow down your most productive engineers. Um, I think that it makes them less complacent and makes them use it more um, pointedly and more targeted rather than just throwing AI at it and just saying, let's just do whatever the heck we want to with this AI. But I don't think uh, I don't think capping it necessarily hides the real cost of work either. Um, I think that capping it shows or emphasizes the real cost of work, right? If you're having AI do everything and you're blowing through your entire year's budget because of I think that that's really just emphasizing how much the work actually costs.
It's definitely going to come down to how you're measuring the value that you're getting from it. I think a lot of it is they don't know how to measure it right now. And yeah, I think I'm on the same page with you. I think capping it for now while they figure that out is probably a good idea. And then maybe you play around with where you want that cap to be and start really figuring out a way to not only just see, token usage or just general usage, you see the what they're using it for. I I think there definitely has to be a line again that they draw, but I don't think it needs to be a hard line right now. I think it just needs to be something that they're viewing regularly. You know what I mean? I think that capping it and knowing, finding a way to just find the value because yeah, if I see Joe Schmo is using it more than, Jennifer, well, that doesn't really mean much because for all I know, Joe Schmo is using it to look up a recipe for s'mores. I don't know. So there needs to be a way for you to actually, and I'm not sure what all they can see on the back end and stuff like that, but there needs to be a way to measure exactly what employees are using it for, and from there, you can get a gauge on how much value you're actually generating from this.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, we do all these, engagements with AI. The way we tackle it is we find actual use cases that, AI could help with. We're not just like giving AI to these customers and just being like, yeah, let's just
Right.
do whatever the heck we want, right? And I think that for a company as big as Uber, and Microsoft, uh, just I think that they're pretty idiotic in just allowing their engineers to do whatever they wanted with AI, right? Rather than picking targeted use cases or using AI to scaffold their code projects, or using AI to scaffold projects, but then the engineers themselves come up with better plans and creating the integrated shell of all their components, et cetera, and then just having AI fill in the in-between code, et cetera, rather than just having it build literally everything and blowing through their entire company spend in 4 months for their year spend. So like I think that they should just do what you and I do, Shoop. Just we go to these companies and we look at their productivity and how they do certain things and find ways AI can help. And I think that's what these big enterprises need to start doing, rather than thinking that, hey, we're a big company, we can just throw AI at it and give it to our customers or our employees and hope that they do um you know targeted things while having freaking uh usage, while ranking usage on internal leaderboards and saying use it as much as possible.
Right. Well, to be honest, I've got so much sympathy for companies right now because we're in the weeds in AI, and I feel like it's our full-time job to keep up with it. And
Yeah.
it's changing so fast, right? And so you're a CEO of a company and you hear all these changes, and then you got to say, all right, well, I'm gonna teach my employees, my 50,000 employee company, how to use AI. And you go through and you train them up, and then the next week it changes, And so you've blown through all that training money on here's how you use AI. I've got the perfect case for it, right? And then it changes next week. And so, man, it's a hard frontier to be in, I think, if you're trying to direct a company on how to leverage it. But it does seem like, it's the person that can do it faster and better usually wins, right? And
Mhm.
so companies are going to have to figure this out. Like, and all the money that Uber spent on AI, how much did their stock go up? How much did their revenue go up? Did they get new customers? Like, what cool new thing could they possibly add to the Uber app that's going to skyrocket their revenue? Right?
I
I don't
have
know.
I
Right?
have no idea.
I don't
I
know
I've
either.
probably used Uber more than anybody on this call, and I have no idea where AI could help.
It's a pretty good app to begin with, right?
Yeah, I mean, sure they have like algorithms to find the closest driver or whatever, find trigger surge pricing at certain times with the higher demand, etc.
Right.
I have no idea where else AI could be implemented there. Like
Right.
I doubt they're seeing real customer facing value that's equal or greater than the amount of spend they spent on AI.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
Hmm.
that brings us to our next article here, the consumer backlash. So DuckDuckGo makes its no AI search engine easier to access as its traffic booms. So the article basically says here a demand side counterweight to all the supply side spending. DuckDuckGo launched Chrome and Firefox extensions that let users set its AI free search page, noai.duckduckgo.com, as their default. No AI answers, no chat prompts, fewer AI images. The trigger was Google's AI first search overhaul, its biggest change in 25 plus years, pushing the 10 blue links below AI overviews and an AI model chat. DuckDuckGo says no AI page traffic tripled on a single late May day and has held 84% above baseline. Insane.
Hmm.
A sustained shift, not a spike. Notably, DuckDuckGo isn't anti-AI. It still sells an AI chatbot subscription. The story is about choice and defaults, not ideology. So the question here is the no AI surge a durable market segment or temporary friction with a clunky rollout that fades once AI search improves?
Personally, I think it comes down to that adoption, you know, how susceptible people are, how quickly they want to adopt it, and, you know, seeing stuff on social media and seeing stuff like just with people that aren't, like you said, in the weeds with it. I think a lot of people are, they're not big on AI at the end of the day. And I think to a degree, there is a part of the market that you can capitalize on that, if you want to use the word capitalize on. But whenever someone searches Google, there's a lot of people that don't like that it gives you the AI cover first, and that is a reality.
Why
Um,
why do you think that is though?
I think people are, you know, I think people are always hesitant to accept change or, adopt new technology. I think if you do reading on any technological innovation going back to when they had, oxes pulling things in the field, right? Like people are always gonna say the bad part of it. And, there's gonna be initially downsides and upsides. And that means people, there's always gonna be people that don't like it.
That's like a
And
huge increase though. That 84%. That's
you have to
nuts to me.
realize though, like social media, right, is a huge the impact that social media has on things like this, especially when you take into consideration like the fact that algorithms, they prioritize clicks and interactions and things like that. So once that snowball gets rolling, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you kind of force people into this little tunnel of, well, AI bad, you know what I mean? And so as silly as we think it is, the reality is that there is a large amount of people that quite literally just don't like AI because someone told them that it was bad and they don't understand it, so they're just willing to accept that it's bad.
Hmm.
And that's there's so many silly things that people come through on social media that I won't get into. But it just is. That's all I can really say. I mean, I'll never understand it. And I've had conversations with even some of my closest friends that are just, they do not like that, you know, AI boom of stuff. And I've gotten in back and forth of like the impacts and what it means that they refuse to adopt it and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, I'm just like, all right, well, you make your own decision, and I feel like there's a lot of people, and the people that I know of that dislike it more than anyone else are people that are, on social media all the time. you're not working, you're sitting on your phone on social media. Like the most social media heavy people I know are the ones that are the most anti-AI. And then you think a lot of, artist type things, like so much of the AI stuff that came out early on was just developed a negative impact. And I think that people really ran with that. So I think that's why something like DuckDuckGo having an anti-AI, where I don't see it being very popular in the long run, I think short run for so many people that see that and have decided that they're anti-AI. A lot of those people, you gotta realize they don't even know like where AI is leveraged in the technology they use. They're just completely, I don't want to say ignorant to it, but they are. They don't know that it's being used. And then when you tell them it's being used, they try to refute that. And so, and God forbid they Google it, because Google is using AIs and they're trying to control your brain or something. I don't know. So it's just a battle right now of the early adoption, the people that are wanting to adopt it but don't exactly know how, and then the people that have been told it's bad and don't either know how to research it and understand it better, or they just don't want to. And so I think that's why something like this is successful in the short term.
I mean, I think trust is also a big issue. I mean, we've seen this, we've seen issues with, that AI summary at the top, not
Mhm.
having correct information. And at the end of the day, Google itself, when you're searching something on Google, I think they're forced to have like a label that said, okay, these first four links are sponsored results or whatever, right? Are they
Which is why
still
people don't like
forced?
Google in general.
I mean,
I
are they
mean,
still forced to do the same thing with their AI thing? If that AI is, if people can spend to have that AI bot thing spit out, a block of text, right? Rather than having the choice to go through a bunch of links to find the link that they want to find, you know, and that brings me to this next question here: does forcing AI as a default ultimately erode trust faster than it drives engagement?
I just think a lot of people don't understand that technology from any point in history, it doesn't get rolled out perfectly. It just doesn't. There's different protections and safeguards that are built along the way. And I think a lot of people, they're not willing to revisit it once that initial impact is made. I understand the hesitation. I'm not super big, or especially initially, on Google's approach to it. Mainly because they will prioritize customers and things like that over valuable information sometimes, and that's just a Google issue inherently. That's not specific to their AI, but I think people have gotten so accustomed to how Google functions that they never really took that part into consideration because that's how they've operated forever. Those top however many links, they're more based on priority of payment than it is, what's the most truthful. Um,
True.
so I think people now seeing whenever they say that in the AI and they're like, oh, this isn't super reliable. Why is Reddit being used for my point of reference?
Right.
Um, I think that is the big factor that is pushing people away from AI search there. I think that's probably the number one. And even for me, that's why I don't just go all in. Whenever I saw that, it's like, oh yeah, Wikipedia and Reddit are your two resources that we're using for everything. I'm like, what? I'm searching up historical facts. I don't want to talk about, I don't want to see that, you know? So I think that it's just something that people don't really I think AI is bringing to the surface a lot of things that people didn't fully understand before. Because as you really look at like a decade of technology, the people that were there when it first got rolled out were the ones that were hesitant. But as it got adopted more and more over time, people just start trusting it and being okay with it and understanding it more. Um, and I think AI is kind of the same thing. It's new, people are against it. They don't want to be forced to use it. They want to be able to have access to that thing that is familiar, that they trust. And, you know, I come from a background of blue collar work, right? So people that work with hand tools or, anything of that nature, right? I have people that'll tell me that the table saws that, stop when you get your finger in it are worse than the ones that don't. And it's because they don't trust that it would actually stop. But I'm like, well, it has been shown to work almost every time. And do you plan on putting your finger through it on purpose at any point? Or like, what's the difference? Like if your finger's going through the blade, it's going through the blade. So you either get the one that you hope is going to work and not cut your finger off, or you just decide, well, that one, I don't want to use that because, I don't trust the technology on it. Okay, well, now if you're in a position to lose that finger, congratulations. I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? So I think that kind of thing is like, it doesn't matter how much fact-based research or analytics there are. I think people have their thing they're comfortable with and then their thing that they're nervous about. And either they'll be late adopters and eventually come around, or they will just, they'll refuse to use it. And I think that's just always been something. I did a huge thing on when miners first started using drills and things instead of pickaxes. They there was a huge movement against that. And it's like, well, you've got cracking wood tools and metal and the things that are hurting you, and you've got to be out in the tunnels, or you can use something more efficient. And, yes, there are downsides, right? When something comes out, it's not perfect. Those, when they came out, not perfect. And I understand that, and I think everybody should understand that. And when we're rolling it out, I think people should understand like where a consumer could look at it like that. But also, if you are a consumer or a person interested in understanding the technology, you can't go in just claiming that it's bad because it's new and you don't understand it. Understand that it's going to grow, it's going to get better, and sure, it's not perfect right now, but it's a completely new segment of technology as far as like the scale of it. Um, and I think just people are nervous about it. And I think a lot of people will come around as it gets more trusted. I'd say the next 5 years, your, level of people that are comfortable with it will grow. And again, there's the argument of dependency, like Sahib mentioned, like coders coming out of college right now. Do you have the actual skill or do you have or did you just get by on using ChatGPT or Claude or whatever? It's going to be a balance. And I think you try to find the line there. And none of us can sit here and predict and act like we really know what the end game is going to be. But I do think in the next 5 years, you're going to see it becoming less polarizing, which is why probably having something like the no AI search is going to be so easy for them to gain traction on right now because they can provide that they can leverage that market segment that is anti Google right now because they forced AI on my search, even though you can scroll down and still do the same thing yourself. But it's the premise for them. It's the principle.
Yep. So before we close out here, I'll leave you both with a single question. Is 2026 the year AI capability got ahead of AI economics? And does the winner end up being whoever makes inference cheap, not whoever makes models smarter?
Hmm.
It's a difficult question.
Yeah. I'm a big free market person. I think whoever figures out how to make it more efficient and better and leverages the tools, um, they'll in the end, that's the solution, right? Um, yeah, I get that's really interesting. I don't know how Yeah, the whole AI economics of it is interesting.
I mean, it's
Oof, I
so
don't
new.
know.
I mean, we've lived it with it for what, 3 years now.
Say
Um,
3 years.
and technology has rapidly, s- you know, rapidly grown in the last, you know, decade, decade and a half, etc., exponentially. I mean, even the last 20, 25 years or so, we had more technological advancements than the last 300 years combined, or whatever the heck. So,
And they haven't even locked in regulations for some of the technologies developed 20 years ago. They're
yeah.
still trying to catch up on that to even
So,
know how, God forbid, you try to draw out regulations for AI stuff right now. Like, it's
On
just,
that
where do you,
note, though, Chris, I think it's going to get even harder to regulate, right? Because I think most of our elected officials don't understand
yeah,
the simpler parts of our economy, right? That they try to legislate, like the banking industry, whatever. I mean, it's not an easy thing to try. It's not an easy problem to try to solve. But so throw a really hard problem at them, I think it's going to be really hard to regulate. Um, the thing that gives me hope, though, it's like um, if we as a society force our representatives to do the right thing, even though they're not the right people, maybe they're not the most great at heart people. If we can press them to do the right thing, I think we'll make it through all of this, right? Um, so that's at least that's my take on this whole venture. Who knows? It's a wild ride, but I think as long as we hold our morals and um, try to do the right thing and do good things, we'll make it through.
yeah. Well,
yeah.
it's a difficult question, guys, and I'll leave it to the audience. Let us know what you think. Is the winner, you know, will the winner be who makes inference cheaper, or will it be whoever makes model smarter? Let us know down in the comments below. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you
Thank
guys.
you, Shoop, as well, for being on. Great guest,
Yes.
and
Let me know.
hope to have you on some of our next shows in the future.
I look forward to it. Take care, guys.
Right? Let me. Okay, let me close this recording.